Hey Dawn, you're excited to see the fit test? Well, I was so excited to see the fit test, I decided that I didn't want to wait till the end because, remember, we still have the Nick Veros draft to do, and I didn't want to wait till the end. I got so excited to do it, so I sewed them together, and we can see the fit test today. I had my husband take photos of all of my views, front, side, and back, so it'll be easy for me to share with you guys. Hey Connie, welcome. Hey Barbara. All right, so what we're gonna do today, if you missed it, after last Friday when I want to say I effed up the Don McCunn method a little bit, I've decided that I can't get out of my own head when I'm trying to follow someone else's instructions, because partially I'm trying to decide if what's happening is going to work for me, and that's not really part of the exercise. And also, there's a lot of little nitty-gritty details, and both the Jan Minott and Don McCunn methods were very unique and different compared to the more traditional way of drafting pants that I learned from, from doing the way I draft from the Helen Joseph Armstrong book primarily is how I started, and I've made some changes to how I draft. I've added some of my own steps, whatever. But these two methods were so different that I was having a hard time bending my brain to them. So that's why I decided to do the Don McCunn method as an upload. So that's on Fit Tip Tuesday, this past week. So if you missed it and you want to see the complete start to finish Don McCunn method, please check for that. Maybe I'll stick it in the description when I get done. But I did it start to finish, and I was able to throw in my tips and different ideas and thoughts on things, because it was just a much more relaxing experience for me. So I'm not going to be drafting with other people's methods on lives anymore, because it makes me a crazy person inside my head. So there you are. Hey, Connie Russo. Hey, Darlene. Welcome. Hey, Karen, Carla, Janie. Welcome, everybody. I want to tell everybody out of the gate that my pants fitting workshop in Arizona is full, but there is space left in my bodice fitting class on March 20th, 21st, and 22nd. So if anyone's interested in that, there is a link in the description below. The benefit of doing it in my home court in Manchester, Connecticut, is that I will pick you up from the airport and bring you to the Hampton Inn, and I stay with you at the Hampton Inn. And March 20th is my birthday, so anyone coming gets to celebrate my birthday for dinner. So we do dinners together, which are a lot of fun. They're not included, but lunch is when I'm home. So it's going to be a fun time. So if anyone wants to join me for bodice fitting March 20, 21, and 22, that is in the description below. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Hey, Andrea, welcome. I know it's morning for Andrea because she's from California. All right, we're going to get started. I'm so excited. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the pattern pieces first. I have the pattern pieces that were the drafts, and I basically just added a 1/2 inch seam allowance to them so I could cut out muslins. And for this, I just used muslin because I figured it'd be easier to see what was going on with the, with the traditional muslin, knowing that I would have to do some fitting for them after the fact. I don't know that I'm going to produce these drafts into pants that fit me, but I have some really good ideas about what's going on and how to fix it based on the photos. And I am very excited to tell you that there is significant difference in the fit of these two. So it's almost like I'm just going to tell you my initial thing. I like the front of the Don McCunn draft, and I like the back of the Jan Minott method in terms of just how the muslin looks. And I'm going to explain all that to you. Hey, Jen from Washington, also in the morning. Well, thank you for starting your day with me. Hi, Helen. Oh, you can't wait to see the results of the 12s too. Well, I'm going to show you. And I decided instead of like trying to put them on and cram myself behind my chair and show you, I had my husband take nice clear photos. So you'll be able to see um, how they fit. But again, before we do that, let's take a look at the actual patterns here. And I think it's really interesting to, you know, see the shapes. So this is, let's just look at the back legs first to compare. Okay, so this and these are the back legs for the Jan Minott and Don McCunn. And I think you can see here, I'm going to put them on top of each other. The Don McCunn back leg is more narrow than the front leg. And I think the primary reason for that is because, remember, if you saw the draft, at the end of the process for the Don McCunn method, he has you take off an inch on the side seam in the back and add it to the front. So at the end of the draft, he has you cut off an inch here and add it to there. And someone commented in the, someone commented under the video that it was interesting because the other difference between the Don McCunn and the Jan Minott methods is there is no ease added to the front leg. And someone commented that there's no ease in the front leg, but then he added ease at the side seam by transferring that inch. And what I just want to explain to you guys here, I'm just going to go back and look in the book here for a second. He takes the waist measurement and he uses a quarter measurement for that. So the Don McCunn method does quarter waist, okay? It's not accounting for a front and back waist. Now, I think I've said to you guys that for a lot of women, the front waist is bigger because of a tummy than the back up at the top and the small of your back. So to me, I don't think he added ease to the front leg by transferring an inch to the side seam. I think he's balancing the front and back width for the shape of an average woman, making, you know, adding more here and taking it off of the back. Let me just stop and say hi to Judy. I'm glad you're here live. Yay, I'm glad you're here too. And Jen says, don't we need more room in the back leg for walking movement? Seems it's awkward to have a narrower, a back narrower than the front. Okay, so yes, in my opinion, the back leg should be wider than the front leg. I'm comparing, in this case right here, I'm comparing the back leg of the Jan Minott to the back leg of the Don McCunn. So the Don McCunn back leg is narrower than the Jan Minott draft. So that's what I was talking about there. And it is because we took an inch off, okay? So I was just comparing, and I'm just also comparing, if we look at, I'm going to flip one upside down so I can have them sort of crotch point to crotch point here. Okay, so you can see the crotch, this crotch shape is very similar. This is the Don McCunn, this is the Jan Minott. It's very similar, except the Jan Minott method uses a more detailed approach to define the, oh, hold on a second, we need more, okay, yep, all right, so, hold on. That's a good idea, Karen. Hold on. Let me just put, this is, let me use red. Okay, so this is Don, and this is Jan. This is Don, and this is Jan. So you can keep them track like that. Okay, so if we look closely at the way the back crotches were drafted, okay, oh, that's the front, I'm sorry. Let me get the back leg of the Jan. Okay, so the Jan Minott method gives you information to have a diagonal guide for how much the back crotch curve is to the crotch line. This is the crotch line right here, and it tells you, depending on your size range, small, medium, large, or extra large, what the diagonal should measure in the front and the back. I think that helps you get a more accurate crotch curve. And there's even information for, you know, if you have a flat behind, you know, it shortens the diagonal so that the back will dip a little bit. The McCunn method of drafting the original crotch, and I'm going to go ahead and just pull this back for a second. This is the draft has you go up 2 inches from the crotch line, and he considers the tip of the crotch the thigh line in the McCunn book. So he has you draw like a quarter circle, you know, or like a curved line from 2 inches up to the tip of the crotch in the draft. He does that both front and back. So you can see here's the front, okay? So it just makes this little curve. So both of these curves are almost identical. This one's a little flatter because the extension is a little bit longer, but he doesn't have any diagonal guide to control how far that curve is dipping in for your shape. So that is one difference in the draft. And I'm going to talk about what this is in a minute. All right, let me just stop and see what Judy's saying. Most pants patterns I've noticed, they have such a big difference between the waist and hip ratio, almost 10-inch difference. Example, if hip is 40, then waist is like 32. So what is the difference in those 12s? Okay, so that's a really good question, Judy. I think when people are drafting patterns to sell, so when a pattern designer is drafting a pattern to sell, they use standard body chart measurements, and it's pretty standard in a measurement chart for the waist to hip have that much difference. You know, 10 inches, 9 inches, 8 inches is pretty standard. The difference here is I used my own measurements to draft this pattern. Now, you would think, okay, I used my measurements and I drafted a pants pattern using my own measurements, so it should fit correctly, right? No. It's actually harder to reverse engineer and start from the beginning and draft up to a pattern because you're still going to have to fit it. And I'm going to show you the pictures in a minute. But because I used my own measurements, the difference between the waist and the hip are the same as my differences. And if we look at I have my little chart here, my waist is 39.5 inches. Okay, my tummy is 43 and my full hip is 41. So that means that my tummy is actually bigger than my full hip down lower, and then my upper thigh is 24. So it's almost like I'm a reverse triangle. I'm wider up at the top and more narrow. So the ratio between my waist and my full hip is 3.5 inches. So that's something that, you know, you can account for if you're drafting for yourself. Also, though, my fitting method allows you to account for that as well, because you pick your full hip size to pick the size of the pattern, and then you fit it, and you take it in and you make the waist work. So I don't even bother measuring the waist anymore when I do pants fitting, because I add 2 inches on the side seams, which gives me 8 inches to play with. So I hope that answers your question, but that's a very good question. There's a 3.5 inch difference in these toiles, because that's the difference in mine. And I think you can see how straight it is. And if you watch the Don McCunn drafting tutorial that I posted on Tuesday, I talk about this being a weird shape alert. There's no traditional hip curve here because my measurements were so close. And like in the back leg, you can see, because I added dart, that really pushed it out, right? So my waist, if you look at how this side seam is, it's actually angling this way a little bit. It's a little bit wider here than it is at my full hip because I added an inch dart. So I had to push it out a little bit more. Jen says, it's interesting to me that the shape of the crotch curve would vary based on size range. Well, it's not necessarily the shape. It's really, let me get the Jan Minott book out here to show you. I have the book so we can refer to things if we have questions. The way she categorizes her diagonals, it's basically to set the depth of the crotch curve. So what she does is, in the front, she has your diagonal be an inch. Medium is an inch to an eighth to an inch and a quarter. Large is an inch to a quarter to an inch to 3/8. And very large can get up to an inch and a half. So when you consider the fact that there's only a 1/2 inch difference across this very smallest size to the very largest size, that really is not that big of a difference. But the fact that she's giving you a diagonal, it just gives you a guide to help you draw that crotch curve. Those measurements are for the front. And then what she does is she tells you, based on your shape now, your shape, so she gives you those diagonals for the front, and then she uses your shape as a guide to change the length of the back diagonal. So the average one, if you're in an average shape, she has you make the back diagonal 1/8 of an inch longer, so it's not so close to crotch. And then if you've got a high full hip, it's a 1/4 inch longer. And then if you have a flat seat, she makes it shorter. So shorter would be to bring it down. So, you know, she accounts for body type in the back. The front is sort of a standard, and then the back is a body type. Is it more a depth thing? It is a depth thing. It's a how, you know, it's trying to create the shape of a crotch curve that's going to kind of agree with your shape. So again, in the front she has standard numbers, and then in the back she has you modify them based on the shape of your behind and how low or high it is, basically. So interestingly, you know, because I'm an average shape, I did make my my diagonal in the back a little bit longer. But you can see here, you know, so here's the shape in the front, and then in the back, and this is on the Jan Minott method, you can see in the back, and I'm just going to bring it in really close here, you can see it's that little 1/8 of an inch longer. All right, so there you are. So that's a big difference between the Don McCunn and the Jan Minott method. The other thing, if you remember, the Jan Minott method starts with the hip draft or the hip block. So you basically get this all off of your hip block, and then you draft down from there. The Don McCunn method has you draft from, and I'm going to make this a wider view here so you can see the entire leg, or as much of the leg as I can share. Oh, wait a minute. Darlene is saying closer to the body makes the line longer. Well, it depends on what your body shape is, Darlene, because if you, like, let's say you have a low behind, a shorter line is going to actually push the curve down to agree with your body. So it's really not length compared to how close it is to your body. It's more about making that crotch curve agree with what your shape is. So think of it like, you know, if the crotch curve, you know, the closer the crotch curve is to the crotch line or even lower, the lower your behind is, right? We all know someone, and I know a lot of people whose crotch curve is below the crotch, below this line, because their behind is lower. So it could be where you need to draw the diagonal in the wrong direction. So don't get hung up on the length of the line as it compares to how close or far it is from your body. It's more about creating the shape. The shorter the line, the closer it'll be to crotch level. The longer the line, the more fabric you'll have in here. So for people whose high hip, like if the fullest part of your hip is up high, you're going to need more fabric and a less deep hole. That's more what you should be thinking about for the diagonals. All right, so the thing I wanted to show you here now is I want you to look at how long these drafts are. So I did this one because I was drafting and I was recording and I didn't have to worry about making sure you could see it live. I drafted using full length. So the way you start the Don McCunn draft, if you didn't follow along with me on Tuesday, is you start at the cuff line. This is what he calls the cuff line. And you go all the way up to the top, floor to waist at your side seam. And what that ends up doing is it ends up making a very long draft, because the next thing you mark is cuff line down here all the way up to the top of your inseam, which is this blue line. And he considers the this blue line, which I would consider the crotch level, he considers that the thigh line right here. Okay, so that's a little bit different too. And so I used my floor to top of my inseam, mark that, that's the thigh. But if you take a look at, you know, the diagonal shape of the inseam at the bottom to the tip of the crotch, that's much longer now than my inseam. So it makes a very long draft. I think if I were going to do the Don McCunn method again, I would do my actual inseam, not my floor to, you know, top of inseam and floor to waist. I would do from like where my hem is going to be up. And the way I figure that out for something easy is I just subtract 3 inches from the floor to waist and the floor to inseam to give me my inseam and my, you know, my side seam, because it's about 3 inches from the floor to the bottom of my ankle. So that's how I kind of figured that out. But you can see here now, my floor to inseam measurement was 33 inches. But if you measure, oh, actually, I guess it still is 30. It's only a half an inch longer. It's 33 and a half. So I guess it's really not that much longer. I guess it just looked giant to me. So, so there's that. Oh, Lazarus is saying, you are so right, Jen. Unless the drafting method has you as a model, all the lines will need adjusting. Well, that's true, but also you're going to see from the photos that if you have yourself as a model, because this is me, I used my measurements, you're going to see that I need adjusting. I think it's partially how you're coming up with the shapes. For example, you know, on the Don McCunn method, he has you measure out from, you know, out from the center line, or out from the line over, and that's then where he considers the center front. So it's almost like he measures out from the center of the leg line, which is this dark blue line, out to half the hip. So from here to here is half of my quarter hip measurement. He considers that the center back edge. So that's a little bit different than I'm used to. And then he has you just continue that line like this. So the line is like this. So it goes from the end of the hip line down to here. And that's how he figures out where to put the crotch. That's a little bit different. And I think you get different results for different things. So let me show you the back view picture here, or the front view. Well, let me see what I can find here. We're going to start looking at some pictures all right, let's look at the front view first. All right, I'm just going to put it right in front of my face. So the left hand looser looking muslin is the Jan Minott method. Oh, okay. Lazarus clarified for me. He means the model they use when designing the method. That is 100% true, because certain things, you know, will seem to work for certain shapes and they're not going to work for other shapes. That's absolutely true. You get a gold star for that. All right, so let's look at the front view. I wonder how many if I can cram. I'm going to get the back view too here. Let's put, okay, here. There's the front and back of Jan Minott. So you can see here, the back view of the Jan Minott is pretty close. I feel like the back crotch curve is sort of laying against my behind, or sort of like pulling against my behind there a little bit. So I think I need a little bit more depth front to back, just a little bit in the back. Now in the front, see all that loose fabric? I think I could fix this by cutting off some of the front crotch extension and inseam and adding it to the back, because I just think this front leg is just way too full. So that's how the fronts compare. And then if I switch them around, here is the front and back of the Don McCunn draft. I like the front of the Don McCunn draft better because there's less extra fabric there. But look at how that back is pulling through my legs. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the reason why that's doing that could be my fault in my, what do I want to say? So after you finish drafting the Don McCunn method, you take an inch off the side seam in the back and add it to the front. And then he also has you check the depth of your crotch curve. And what he uses to compare is, let me just go back. Oops, sorry. Let me go back over here. So what he has you do is he has you take your back and front leg, and he has you put them together like this. So originally, before I added seam allowances, all right, it looked like this. And I'm just gonna pin them together so it doesn't slide around. Let me just get a pin. Okay, so I'm just gonna put one pin here. I'm just lining up the edges so you can see like this. So this was my depth after drafting, and I think you can see here, this is a teeny little depth. Look at how small that depth is. So I know that's not going to fit me. Now the way he has you check for this is he has you check your depth and compare it to here. So I had this depth is, I don't like that ruler. And he has you do it right on the 2-inch line. So right where the curves start, he has you measure across. So that's 4.5 inches. Now I know my depth is way more than 4.5 inches. So I know I had to add more depth. What he has you do is he has you measure the outside of your leg. He uses 2 L-shaped rulers, and he has you put them on your body to figure out the outside upper thigh measurement, and that's what he's using to determine depth. And I just want to show you the picture of how he determines this so you can see. Let me see. All right, I don't know if it's going to be kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can share this with you. I mean, if anybody has the Don McCunn book, it's on page 22. Oop, let me move these out of the way for a second. All right, and I'm gonna, oh, wait a minute, let me go over here, sorry. I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna just get this in as close as I can. So what he has you do, I'm gonna see if I can get this really close. He has you use two L-shaped rulers, so you're making a box around your leg, and then you measure that outer thigh to determine your depth. That's what he's doing for depth. So I don't have two L-shaped rulers, so I had my friend came over and I had him mark for me. I put the ruler through my legs. Okay, this was my front. I had this against my tummy. So my tummy was out here, but my curve was over here. So I had him mark where I start to curve in the front and where I curve in the back. And that ended up to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches. 8¼ inches was the depth measurement I got doing it this way with help from somebody. For this draft, I was on my own. So what I did was I used the side leg of my ditto form. If you remember, this is me in half scale. So I measured 3½ inches here, you know, down here, and then I doubled it and I got 7 inches. So I was guesstimating 7 inches when I was working with the Don McCunn method. So that's why I'm saying this is probably a little bit of my error of not getting the best depth measurement, because what you do is after you determine what your depth is, you then add to the back crotch, and that's how I got this extension. Okay, and this looked huge to me. It looked huge because the other thing you have to consider here is if I'm going to add to that extension to give me the depth I need, like this, so let me just put it like this. So now I have, okay, I have this much. So now I have like 7 inches, okay? So I went with that for this draft. Oh, you know what? I feel like a silly nilly. Judy's saying you need one of those flexible rulers. Well, guess what? I do have a crotch template. Why didn't I think to get that out and take the measurement from there? So that's my bad. So that's what I'm saying. This whole depth situation is really my error in not getting a good body measurement to extend this out. But here's the other issue. If I had extended this out, like he said, another 1½ inches, so I got a full 8¼ inches, my thigh measurement, it's already 15 inches in the back. If I added another inch, it would have been 19 inches just in the back, and then in the front I have in the front I have 12½ inches. So that is a very large thigh measurement. So that's why I think I was kind of picking less here, because I know I can't push this out anymore because I already have way too much ease on my leg. My thigh measurement's only 24 inches. So if I were to fix this, if I were going to try to fix this to fit me and to alleviate, let me go back to show you here. So we're trying to now alleviate the issue of this pulling right here. What I would do is, and I'm just going to do it. Okay, so what I would do is I would say to myself, I need like another inch. So I'm going to measure this. From this blue line to this blue line is a little more than an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this right along here. And I'm going to slide this blue line. Oh, that's not in focus. Hold on. There we go. I'm going to slide this over like this. So see now, if I do that and if I tape that in place, okay, what I would end up doing is I would end up needing, let me just put a little more tape here, and then I need a scrap of paper. Put this little scrap right here. Okay, and then I would sort of, let me use different color, we'll use red. So I would be over here, and I think I would kind of, you know, I could dig this out like this and sort of do this to give myself more. So now I have more depth, right? So instead of extending over here, I push this over, you know, and then I would, you know, and I probably would, you know, let me cut this off so you can see. So there's my new back crotch with more depth. And then over here on this side, I would just have to true this up by filling this in over here. So that's how I can add more depth. You know, I probably would, let me just give myself some more tape here. All right, so then I could, you know, come over here and I could just very gradually come back to, you know, something like that. All right, so you can see what I did was I shifted the back leg over, and now I have more depth. And if I put the front leg back here, and if we check that measurement, now I have, oh, actually I did that wrong. Sorry. I need to go like this. I just put it all back. I need to go like this. Sorry. You don't add paper, you go to where you shifted it. So I made a boo-boo there, so let me get rid of that. Sorry. So something like that. And now if I compare that, I now have 8 inches from here to here. So that's how I would add more depth in my pants pattern, versus pushing out the tip of the crotch over here. I pushed this back. And then I added over here, this part, you know, I filled, a minute. Let me move myself out of the way. Okay, so I pushed this piece, you know, I just trued that up there. So that's how I would fix the grabbing in the back of the Don McCunn draft. All right, let me just see some questions here. Okay. Andrea is saying the horizontal line for the knee back on Don is not level. The crotch is being pulled up. Let's look at that. So I'm assuming you're talking about in the picture. I wonder if I can make that bigger. It might be picking up a little bit. I mean, it looks like my left leg is a little bit wonkier than my right leg. If you look at the right leg, it's not pulling up. So I don't think that would be an issue. And as a matter of fact, when I show you the side view, the side view is showing here that you can see that the back crotch or thigh is actually dipping down and the knee is pretty straight. You can see I have extra vertical length on the back leg, if anything, right there. So from the side view, which I was going to show you in a minute, you can see I need to pick up the fabric because it's tipping down a little bit. And then if you look at the Jan Minott, I think the crotch is okay, but notice my hip line is picking up a little bit. So that needs to be fixed a little bit there. All right, let me just go back and finish reading. Oh, I didn't see Karen saying how you're coming up with shapes is a light bulb moment for me. I thought if I drafted to my measurements, it would be a great fit. I'm seeing with your comparison photos, that's not necessarily true. You know what? I love drafting. I love it, but it's hard, you know, and it really, like Lazaro said, the method you choose to draft with, I think would work better if the models that the person making that method were similar to your shape. I do think the Jan Minott method might be an exception because she does take various models or various body types into consideration throughout the entire draft. So she's trying to figure it out along the way. She's almost fitting as she drafts, but a lot of other methods just use your measurements and you just do what it says, and then you still have to fit it. Okay, so Sandra says it looks like a star shape on the back side. You helped me fix this on mine by just lowering the back curve. I wonder, would that help you too? Looks like there's a star shape on the back. Oh, are you talking about the the Jan Minott method has an X on it here? Okay. Oh, wait a minute. You can't see what I'm showing you. Hold on one second. If you're talking about this, Sandra, this star on the back side here, this is the X section of the Jan Minott method, and you do slide that up and down to make the back inseam a little bit shorter. And she has a formula for that, which took me a minute to figure out. But if you're trying to work with the Jan Minott method, when you get your extension, you know, after you figure your crotch extension, the tip of your extension is known as the 0 point. And then what she says is, and then again, this is by size. She has you, for average posture, the back crotch should be slightly lower than the front. The seat is held higher on the higher, fuller hip, and the back and front crotch lines can be the same level. And then if you have a lower, you must lower it considerably for the low butt version. So she has formulas for, you know, figuring that out based on what you do with your crotch extensions. So she has a chart here where she, based on your shape, average, high full hip or a prominent hip or a low butt, she has you subtract from your crotch extension. So I had to subtract, because I'm average 3/8 of an inch. I went with the shorter amount. Then if you shorten this 3/8 of an inch, she also has you lower it 3/8 of an inch. So that's a fine-tuning adjustment that she does for a different shape in the Minott method. So I don't know if that answers your question, Sandra, but let me know. Okay, where was I, Sandra? Okay, Jen says, what is the difference between shifting the top over and adding to the side versus adding to the inseam? Okay, that's a good question, Jen. So I think I mentioned I always want to know what my upper thigh measurement is compared to the upper thigh measurement of my paper pattern, because if I already have 4 inches or more, and it could be 3 inches on a slim fitting pattern, but if I have like a ton of ease on my back leg, if I extend my inseam, I'm also adding to my thigh measurement, right? So like if I need more depth, and all right, I'm getting a little bit messy. Let's get this out so I can draw in here a little bit. All right, so this will be easier than me trying to show. So like if this is my back leg, let's say, and this is my front leg, let's say, so it's something like that, right? If I measure from here to here and here to here, and those two add up to significantly more or more ease than I need on my upper thigh, and I need more depth, you'll see if I do this, oh, this is my yucky one, I think. If I do this, what am I doing? I'm adding to my upper thigh. So doing that will just make the pants too big for you in the leg. So instead of doing that, let me just find something to erase. I have a lot of muslin scraps here. Okay. All right, so if I erase, let me use the blue because it's so, if I, whoops, this purple is going in the garbage. All right, so here's my back leg. I need more room, but I already have enough ease on my upper leg. I can either cut it and shift that over, or I can looking for another color here so I have something different. You have green. If I do this, and then if I do this, I'm not changing the measurement. I am just shifting it over here. So I added here and I minused here, and I made the depth longer because I dug out the horizontal back crotch. So I'm not changing the measurement on the thigh. So I hope that helps you, Jen, with that question. Let me see. The more, all right, did I see this one? The more your crotch shape dips between the front and back, the longer line needed, though, that isn't captured with just the thigh depth. That's true. That's true. So, like I was saying, if you have a really low behind, okay, so here's our thing again. Here's our crotch level. And remember, I was saying that diagonal that they use to determine, you know, where to draw you that curve. Your crotch curve might need to go like this, below the thigh or crotch level. So that does depend on your shape. So that is true. But so Jen, let me know if that answers that question. And then you say the amount of scraps I have taped to the crotch curve of my draft is crazy. I've been lazy about making a fresh copy. I know. Well, I was lazy and I did not. I was going to make a copy of this and then use that to cut out the fit muslins, and I got lazy and I just added seam allowance. So I understand that. Like, I have so much paper in this room right now. It's ridiculous. It's hard to keep track of everything. Okay. Fit-wise, I mean, what is the difference? Okay, Jen, do you understand the difference now between, extending the crotch versus sliding it over or digging it out? Let me know if you understand that now. Um, Hi Jen, this is Kay Gee. Hi Jen, would it be necessary to add a bit to the front side like you did to the back so they match? Okay, that's a really good question. Um, when I'm doing a fitting and I've got the shapes all set and I'm all done in terms of, adjusting the pieces to get them to fit, I will look at my side seams and see if they are in agreement with each other. So I'm just going to put them like this. Actually, let's look at the Don McCunn because I did change that one. So let's say we wanted to check the side seams now. So what you do when you check your side seams is you line up the knee and the grain line. And this is kind of funky because the back leg is narrower than my front leg. So I'm just going to slide it over a little bit so we can see. But I'm going to line it up at the knee like this. And what you want to look at is, notice how the shape of this is a completely straight line. And now this curves because I shifted this over. So I may trim a little of this off and add it to the front just so my straight line is not fighting my curved line. And also a curved line, if I were to measure like from here up to the waist, this would be a little bit longer now. So to true it up, I could actually add some paper to my front, make it a little bit curved so that they both had the same similar shape. They don't need to be exact. I've seen people suggest that you need the exact same shape front to back. That's really not, I don't think that's really important because you have to remember here, and these are shapes when the pattern's flat. If you have a prominent behind and you have two significant waist darts up at the top of your back leg, when you close those darts, the shape at the top of the side seam is even going to be more curved. So I really feel like as long as they're in agreement going in the same direction, these are not in agreement, right? This is completely straight. So I would trim some off here and add it over there. But also, having said all of that, the way I fit my pants is I allow extra allowance to the front and back so I have room to let out or take in. And then I fit that onto my body the way the fabric is telling me it's straight. So I probably wouldn't cut the paper off here and add it over here unless there was a huge length difference. I would let the fabric tell me how much I needed to let this out to get it to agree with this in my fitting process. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. Okay, so Jen is giving me the thumbs up. Thank you. Oh, and Kay is happy. That's good. Let me go and see here. Okay, now I want to see. Barbara says, what did you say was the method you used when you were first learning? Okay, so when I first started drafting, I used this Helen Joseph Armstrong book, and I feel like this is, I don't want to say the gold standard, but this is the most, I feel like this textbook, Helen Joseph Armstrong, is one of the more popular textbooks for pattern design school. I taught at a fashion design school for several years, and I have a few different versions of this because every year they'd give me a new textbook if there was a new version or an updated version. But the way pants is drafted, okay, you can see here you start with rectangles, right? So this is the way I learned. You'd get your hip width, hip depth, you figure out your crotch, and then you figure out what darts you want, and then you adjust the waist by taking it in if your waist is smaller than your hip. That's how I know, that's how I have learned how to draft, you know, and then you end up doing this kind of thing and that kind of thing. So that's why I saved the Nick Veros method for the last, because Nick Veros does it the exact same way. Not, I don't know if it's exact, I haven't done it yet, but if you look at the basic trouser draft in the Nick Veros book, which I have not done yet, you can see he starts with a box. He creates all the same things as the Helen Joseph Armstrong. So I'm going to follow this to see if it's got a slightly different slant on it, but this is what I'm used to, having one line down the side seam and then building your front and back leg off of that. And that's what I'm used to. And when I draft, that's how I usually start. But, you know, I really think this is a classic Helen Joseph Armstrong. Like I said, I have several versions of this textbook. Although I will say this book assumes you know things that you might not know. You know what I mean? Like, it assumes you know a lot of things. So sometimes this book can be frustrating, but this is what I learned on. Okay. Let me see. All right, so let me see. Jane says, have you thought about taking apart a pair of pants that you love, matching to the pattern to see the difference? I haven't tried to compare a pair of pants that I love to a pants pattern, but I have tried to take a pair of jeans or pants apart and make a pattern from it by tracing it or rubbing it off, and I get close, but it's not exact. I feel like pants or jeans that you've worn, that you like the way they fit, what happens is, in this area over here, which I like to call the Bermuda Triangle, this area, it gets really warped and stretched. And even if you take it right out of the washer and dryer, if you've worn them for a while, this is not a reliable shape. So there has to be some fine tuning that goes on after you trace or compare a pattern. Or try to copy it. But you know what? Now that you say that, I think I'm going to see if I can find a pair of pants. Well, actually, having said that, I would have to go buy a pair of pants because I have not bought pants in a store or jeans in a store in years now. Every pair of pants or jeans I have that I wear, I've made. So I guess I can't pull one out of my closet and try it. But I could go find a pair that fits me and I could cut them apart and try it. Maybe I can go to the thrift store because that would be interesting to see, you know, how like a ready to wear pair of pants that fit me nicely compared to my paper pattern. I think that would be a cool experiment. So thank you for bringing that up. I think I'm going to try that. Okay, Sandra is now saying no, the muslin. So I have to figure out what she's talking about. Oh, Sandra says it looks like a star shape on the back side. You help me fix that by lowering the crotch. I'm wondering if those would help you too. Oh, are you talking about, Sandra, are you talking about this, not this, where's the other one? This one? Are you talking about all of this pooling coming into the behind, that star-shaped wrinkles? You know, sometimes, I mean, scooping down would also help this a little bit because remember, it's a little bit too long. You can see that on this picture here, that from the side view, that the back crotch line is dipping down and all those rumples on the back leg are extra vertical length. So yes, scooping down or lowering the back crotch would help this. But I think the bigger issue is that you don't have enough depth front to back. And I know I don't because I measured it. So I hope that clarifies for you, Sandra. Okay. All right, let me see. Where am I here? Oh, you said the one you were just working on, the other one. All right. Sandra, ask me again. All right. Did you ask me again? Um, oh, you're good now. Okay, good. I'm having trouble keeping track of everyone's comments. Um, okay, let me see here. Um, let me see. All right, Jen says, hi Spot. I don't see a question, but hello. Jen says, doesn't the fit change the angle of things too the because the grain line twists? Is there any guidance for how close fitting the toile should be? Okay, so that's a loaded question about the grain twisting and all these other things. Um, so again, this you have to look at what you're drafting, right? In the Helen Joseph Armstrong book, there are instructions to draft closer fitting, like tight jeans or, more slacks because it has a shorter crotch extension. So you really want to draft the style pants you're making. A twisted leg is not caused by making it closer fitting or looser fitting. A twisted leg can happen. The easiest thing is if you cut your fabric out off grain, that could cause a twist. Or if the length of your side and inseams are not the same and you push that difference all the way to the bottom or all the way to the top instead of fixing it where the problem is, that can also cause a twisted leg. So I hope that answers that question. The other thing is you have to be careful about your grain line or your center balance line on your pattern not getting too close to center back unless you have a curvy figure. If you're a straight figure like me, you really want a couple inches at least between the center of the leg and the center back edge, because if it's too close, that can cause rumples on the back leg, but that doesn't cause a twisted grain line either. Okay. All right, Jen is also asking, how do you decide how much to slide over if it's on a curve? 1 inch horizontal does not equal 1 inch vertical-ish. All right, so that's a good question. So let me go back over here. So when I slid it over on the straight part. I didn't slide it in a curve. I slid it right at the top of the curve so I could get an inch over. So you can see here, I slid this blue line, lined it up here, and I slid it over to here. I slid it 1 inch. And before I measured it, I had, I can't remember what it was before I slid it, but then after I slid it, I did have 8 inches. So you want to cut your pattern and slide it where the straight part is, right there. All right, and then how do you know where to make the depth cut away? How do you know where to make the depth cut away? I don't know what that means. I measure my depth. This might answer your question. I measure my depth starting at the tops of the curves. So where it starts to go straight is where I measure across for my depth. Not down here where it's more narrow, but where it starts to straighten out. That's how I determine where to measure. If that answers. Oh, that's what yours looks like. Well, I mean, this is going to fit somebody, right? All right. All right, good. I think I've... Oh, wait, there's more questions. Hold on. Okay, so Dawn is saying, buy a good pair of pants and then make sure you can return them. I do this for fitting. I mean, I could do that. I'm interested in getting a pair of pants that fit me, cutting them apart and laying them on the flat pattern. That would be very interesting to me to see, I think. Oh, good. Sandra says, yes, thank you. Kay says, I know that you like the front of one and the back of the other. Which method in general do you like the most? That's a loaded question because both the Jan Minott method and the Don McCunn method are very unique in terms of the way they go about it. So um, I think they're both pretty cool. But I will say, I think the Jan Minott method speaks to me more because it does feel like fitting to me as you go along. So because I'm fitting as I'm drafting, that would be the reason why I like the Jan Minott method. And I will tell you, I've had her books for 12 years, and I drafted pants for myself out of the books that I had 12 years ago, and they came out pretty good. And that was 12 years ago, which means I knew 12 years less of knowledge that I've now gained. So, I mean, I think, but I also think it depends on which method you find easier and intuitive to understand. Because if you're struggling to understand a method, it's not a good method for you. So I think it also depends on what speaks to you. But I think I like Jan Minott a little bit more, but I think the Don McCunn method is pretty cool too. Okay. Oh, geometry, calculus, and trigonometry. I know. Math, 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 math. Oh, good. Barbara has that one. Yay. Barbara says, yes, it does. And Steven says, I just ordered the 5th edition of Helen Joseph Armstrong. Do you notice any pros or cons? Let me see what my newer one is. Let me look here. This might be not even, this is the most current one I have. Let me see. Oh, this is the 4th edition. So I don't know what the 5th edition is because I don't have that. The 4th edition is the newest version of the Helen Joseph Armstrong book that I have. I will tell you, I was a bad girl, and I would take pages out of here, like when I was doing something, like when I was doing a sleeve draft, and then I didn't put them back in. So I'm missing pages here. I don't think there is a super appreciable difference between this version and this version, which this is the 2nd version. And I believe I have even an older version in my bookshelf somewhere, or I've given a couple versions away, but I know that this is, whoops, sorry. I know that this is the newest version I have. I will say that there's one skirt design. So in the skirt section, there's a design in the 2nd edition that's not in the more current editions. And it's to create a bias skirt. This clingy hip line with flare. I love this design, and it's not in the newer versions. So basically what you do is you pivot and you create, it's almost like you're creating a shaped side seam. See, I love this because it fits and then it flares. So this is one thing I really like about the older edition, this one skirt design. But other than that, I think there isn't a super difference between the versions. I think sometimes they just keep coming out with new versions, so you'll buy new books, to be honest with you. Okay. All right, let me just finish up here. So make sure I get everyone's questions. Oh, Jen says, oh, I mean the hip line might get pulled unhorizontally by the crotch curve being too tight against the body. Nope. If your vertical length is correct, it can be as snug as you need, right? But that brings up the good point that the snugger the design, the more important is it fits right. So if you're trying to make snug, tight pants, everything has to be correct vertically and horizontally because that crotch curve is touching your body all the way around. So it's not going to pull if it's pulling on your horizontal hip line, then something isn't fitted properly. So you can make pants skin tight if you want. It's a lot of work to get that, to fit exactly right. Okay, so I think I answered that in your questions. And then Karen says the third edition was recommended in another drafting class I took. I think I gave my third edition away. Oh, wait a minute. Hold. Hold one moment. Oh, liar, liar, pants on fire. I think I did give my third edition away, but I do have the fifth edition. There it is, the fifth edition. I don't use this one very much because I don't know. I use the fourth edition a lot. But you can see here when I get to the skirt section, there's no clingy skirt like I showed you in the older one. But again, I don't think there's a super difference between them. I will tell you there are. Let me just see here. 806 pages in the fourth edition, and there are there's a few less pages in the fifth edition, so there must be some new things in there because this only doesn't have quite 800 pages. And the second edition, I mean, just to compare pages here, hold on. Well, the second edition has 800 and some odd pages. So I really feel like I'm going to go with my first comment that I really feel like they come up with new additions. You know, they change the coloring. You know, you can see this one is blue. This one is red. So they'll make some little changes. They'll change the font, maybe change some of the illustrations, but I think most of the information is probably similar. So I do have the fifth edition. Here it is. All right, now that I've pulled out every drafting book I own. Oh, Judy's going to miss me and Puyallup. I'm sorry, Judy. Oh, Karen says the third edition was recommended in another drafting class I took. I think any edition would be great. All right, so I just want to talk about, I think I talked about everything that I would do to change these things. Just to recap here, because the front is so full on the Jan Minott method, and the back is, did I lose my back? Where's my back? Whoops. I think I would take some of the crotch from the front and put it in the back just a little bit. Because remember, in the back, it was leaning. See how the back is leaning against me a little bit? So, and I will tell you, and I'm just going to tell you one other thing, and then I have to go because I actually have a fitting class coming up in it, and it's actually starting in like a minute. But another thing you can do after you draft, you know, the idea of taking a ready-to-wear pant and trying it on is a really good idea. But if you have a pants pattern that fits you closely, you can compare your personal pattern that you already have to your draft. I can tell you this is a long front crotch curve for me. So if I take off probably 3/4 of an inch here, add it over here, I think that will fit me better. So it's almost like you're shifting some of the ease from the front to the back, and then the back won't lean up against the back of my behind. It'll, you know, it'll fit better. So that was the other thing I just wanted to make sure I told you. So this is really, really fun. I love doing this. I'm going to do the Nick Veros method, and then I will sew that one up, and we can compare the Nick Veros draft to how these two fit me. So we're not done yet. We're halfway through January pants drafting month here at Jay's Turn Designs, and I'm really excited that you guys came, and I really hope you guys are trying to draft some pants. So if you have any questions or comments, please post those below and I will help you. And I just want to thank everybody for hanging out with me. This is like the highlight of my week, that I get to hang out with you guys and share with you, and I love all your questions and comments, and I really appreciate you. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and Next Friday, I have to take someone to a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock. So I think what I might do is have Fab Fit Friday a little bit earlier in the day. So I'm sorry for my West Coast fam, but I think we'll have to be a little bit earlier next week. But I'll give everyone advance notice. All right. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. Go draft some pants and have a nice weekend. All right. Bye bye.